Folks, I hope you're well. The greatest story never told is the one that the Old Testament, New Testament, and Jesus teach that still remains untaught. There is only one crime, one cover-up from which all other crimes and cover-ups proceed per the Bible. One crime that has two interrelated parts. The first part is that there is a stone or law that has been rejected called the all of the law, whereby if this one law is not broken, no other is. The second part is that there is a promised reconciliation between Jew and Greek, or Jew and Gentile, or Jew and non-Jew, that will begin the restoration of peace on earth. Have you ever been taught what the stone the builders rejected means? The stone or law that the builders of man's laws, man-made laws, and dogma rejected? Were you ever taught that the restoration of peace on earth is initiated when there is a reconciliation between Jew and Gentile, and how that happens? I am not religious and had reason to begin studying the Bible at 15 in 1974 in 10th grade, and began appealing to the most famous people on earth starting 24 years ago in 2000. Historically, it appears that no leader, no pope, no famous preacher or priest, no king or royalty, no famous atheist or psychiatrist, no reporter can figure out the ancient problem source and relatively simple solution to the politics of racism, misogyny, male domination, homophobia, anti-Semitism, and wars. Next to the billions of us, there are only a few people, a relative few that get to project their voices upon the world, all of them of far greater power to reach the masses than myself. I am not monetizing nor seeking fame, and no one needs to mention my name to speak the unspoken solution that's right there in Scripture the whole time. Scripture tells us of one law, and I discovered 2 different videos about this. On the Daily Motivation channel, with 2.62 million subscribers, there was a video titled, "Everything is Secretly Encoded," that I had found last year but could no longer find. I referenced this video near the beginning of my April 17th, 2023 video titled Part 3, NWO Goals 16 through 25. I present the divided law structure of the Roman Catholic Church, explained by Jordan Maxwell as being divided into the Fas, or Fascism of God, which the papacy defined as being, quote, what is right in the sight of God, alongside the jus, the Latin word for justice, of man, or church canon law, referring to man-made laws, what Scripture refers to as the doctrine and commandments of men. The one Fas, or fascism, or my way of God, is that we humans live to make this unseen all-good mind and spirit seen, and especially when problems arise, we use our brilliant minds to determine the problem source, and we find the solution that does no harm, thus maintaining the safety first and peace. That Fas, or fascism, or one my way of God, is one law that still remains the stone the builders rejected in order for their man-made laws, or justice, to rule over the world. The Roman Empire Caesarians and the Jewish Pharisees are of one mind in that both are silencing the one law that carries the same substantive meaning as the one circumcision, that, if taught to mankind, correctly defines the terms Jews and Gentiles and begins the promised reconciliation between Jew and Gentile and the initiation of restoration of peace on earth. Man's fascism walks through the wide gate of the many ways of justifying hurting others for its gain, not the narrow gate of the one way that resolves issues without doing harm. Man's fascism wants the free will of humans enslaved under its control to walk in lockstep, whereas the one Fas, or fascism, or my way of God, does not deceive, intimidate, threaten, force, or kill to enslave the free will of humans. We have the free will to be whomever we want, define ourselves however we want. We live as the people of the circumcision, walking through the narrow gate, living to build the greater safety and peace by resolving rising problems without hurting others, just as all of us who live this way would want rising problems happening elsewhere with people we don't even know to be resolved without hurting us and our loved ones, or anyone else for that matter. Scripture is instructing us that we are to rise above the literal word, the literalizing of biblical characters and stories, to see the spiritual substance of these stories that is about human character. Jesus' gospel clarifies the one law of God which still remains globally untaught, referred to as the stone the builders rejected. Let us see the bigger picture and see it for what it is, keeping our emotions level. These people up top don't hate each other firstly. They need each other to keep this us versus them, divide and conquer dogma going. Every one of them can speak the solution that ends this system of cults of personality, the deifying of powerful humans while demonizing others, the playing victim and then victimizing, all the daily fear-mongering, inflating easily solvable problems into global existential threats. Their number one existential threat is that mankind should ever learn what the corporatized religions of the God of Abraham have never taught, what also corporatized atheism, psychiatry, history books, and the education systems do not teach. They operate and thrive upon lies by omission, all operating upon telling truth to gain trust, but not telling the whole of it. The first commandment, also known as the law of Moses, is, "Thou shalt have no other gods besides me," or before me. Scripture reveals that God is an unseen spirit and mind that is all good. Jesus clarifies this first law when he is asked, "What is the greatest commandment?" The greatest is to love God, this unseen, all-good mind and spirit, with all your heart, all your soul, all your mind. The instruction to love this unseen, all-good mind and spirit with all our being means that we are to make it seen. This is the all of the law. To honor this one law is to break no other. All stones or laws shall fall before this first stone or this first law, meaning that this one law supersedes all others, or, in other words, all laws that get broken are because this first law is broken first. Though none of us can literally touch this unseen all-good spirit and mind, we can make it seen, covering our character and lives in it. The New Testament confirms the Old Testament instruction in Deuteronomy 10:16. "Circumcision therefore the foreskin of your heart, and be no more stiff-necked." The stiff-necked or stone-hearted ones honor a literal circumcision over the circumcision of the heart. Even Jesus reveals that the circumcision, referring to the literal ritual circumcision of the foreskin of a male's penis, avails nothing, as does not being circumcised in that way. The one circumcision that applies to all humans is of the foreskin of the heart. It is a way of living, not a literal ritual circumcision. Furthermore, the circumcision of the heart cannot be literalized into a literal ritual, because if any of us were to try to cut and remove the foreskin of our heart, we would die. Those who are the people of the God of Abraham, the God that is the unseen spirit and mind of the all-good, are the people of the circumcision, people who live to circumcise their hearts, meaning that when they have desires that rise within the unseen womb of their desires, they are to circumcise or cut away or abort that desire and not give it life, but instead use their brilliant minds to determine the problem source, the seed of discontent, and find the solution that does no harm, thus maintaining the safety first and peace. just as they'd want their neighbors or people far removed from them to fix their rising troubles without doing harm to others. The people of the circumcision will later be called the Jews, but there is a pivotal problem here. Scripture teaches that the one circumcision is of the heart, regardless of males having a literal circumcision of the foreskin of the penis. In Romans 2:25-29, this is addressed. I will read that scripture later, but in summary, it is revealing that if a man has a literal ritual circumcision, it profits him if he honors the law of Moses, referring to the all of the law, the greatest commandment, law number 1. But if he dishonors this one law, his literal circumcision is made uncircumcision. Well, we know this cannot be literal, that a literally circumcised man who dishonors this one law will suddenly grow his foreskin back and magically be literally uncircumcised once again. The circumcision of the foreskin of the heart is a way of living that was turned into a literal ritual, in this case, the ritual circumcision of a male's penis. We see this is being paralleled in religions and their holy rituals before and after Jesus, whereby literally joining a religious club and doing their literal rituals maintains your destiny of everlasting peace. But here in Romans 2:25-29, we learn that a literal ritual profits a person if that person is keeping the law, living a life resolving issues without hurting others. But if they live to do harm to others for their gain, whatever that gain is, then their literal ritual, their circumcision, whatever the ritual is made uncircumcision, meaning that it's now meaningless. In other words, the only thing that fulfills your literal rituals is that you are honoring this first law, and you are living to make this unseen all good seen, and fixing rising problems without hurting others, just as you'd want others to fix their rising problems without hurting you. We then learn that people who are not ritually circumcised, defined Gentiles or non-Jews, and are living to make this unseen all good seen, resolving rising problems without hurting others, are in fact people of the one circumcision, the circumcision of the heart. And then we are told what a Jew is, that a Jew is not a Jew outwardly, but inwardly, that honors the circumcision of the heart and not the flesh, meaning that they honor resolving troubles without hurting others over their literal circumcision ritual, or any ritual for that matter. The Bible's promised reconciliation between Jew and Gentile comes when mankind learns that these are terms of character. No matter if we are literally Jewish by ancestry or religion, or we are literally non-Jewish, there are two types of character on earth. The people of the circumcision of the foreskin of the heart, who live to resolve rising problems, troubles, issues without hurting others, and the people of the uncircumcision, who have no problem birthing their unseen desires to do harm to others for their gain, not circumcising those desires to do harm, but instead giving them life, making them seen. No one is born the character of a Gentile or a person of the uncircumcision, or quote-unquote born evil. No one is born with their first conscious moments wanting to lie, foment hate, build wars and chaos to justify blowing up the world, to rearrange it and put it into their new order. We make of ourselves the Gentile, which, as shall be explained, is the same thing as making of ourselves the Nephilim, the fallen angel, the great god, the alien, the stranger. People who are of the character of the Gentile have the same brilliant minds we do, and they know how to fix troubles without doing harm. They will do this for their family, their loved ones, their friends and followers. The Gentile character can end his or her selfish pride and return to the grace and humility of being the living circumcision of the heart, living in the passion of the Christ way, being the good carpenter, fixing issues without hurting others. God is no respecter of persons. Neither should we be. We respect, as God does, the good or God character within others, that they too live to problem solve without hurting others, walking the one way that maintains and expands the safety first and peace. Revelation 2:9, I know thy works, and tribulation, and poverty, in parentheses, but thou art rich. And I know the blasphemy of them that say they are Jews, and are not, but are the synagogue of Satan. Now, folks, I've seen videos with this phrase, synagogue of Satan, that do not explain what it means. In fact, I've never heard anybody explain what it means. The synagogue of Satan is not a literal building, nor is it a reference to literal Jewish people. It refers to a congregation of one-mindedness that will outwardly appear as wanting healing, as wanting the racism and or the misogyny, homophobia, lies, cover-ups, wars to end, but they will make sure that the one law, the all of the law, also called the stone the builders rejected, stays rejected or globally untaught, as well as making sure that the promised reconciliation between Jew and Gentile never happens. A promised reconciliation that is entirely about what the one circumcision is that correctly defines the terms Jews and Gentiles. I find out I'm of Jewish ancestry after my mother, who'd been with the U.S. Secret Service 22 years, suddenly died in November 2016. The people of the circumcision, who are later called the Jews, are people who live to maintain the safety first in peace. Those that say they are Jews and are not refers to the false Jews or the Gentiles. The Gentiles are the false Jews. They are people posing as saviors, posing as healers, so many of them claiming to love God, yet they reject the circumcision of the heart. They refuse to circumcise rising desires to do harm. It is so rejected that to this day, the first law of God and the one circumcision of the heart has never been taught to mankind. For them, life is a business, and the business of life is their way of doing harm for their gain. Each of us is a temple of the living God. What living God do you want to be? We can each be a temple of God and live to make this unseen all-good mind and spirit seen, reconciling troubles without hurting others, but we can also become a temple or spiritual center, or call it church, or synagogue, or mosque, of Satan, or the anti-God, that which denies the character way of God given in the greatest commandment and the circumcision covenant that is of the foreskin of the heart of every human. So, the synagogue of Satan is not a literal building, nor about literal Jewish people, but about humans that make of their temple of body, mind, and soul a temple that rejects the one law in circumcision that maintains the safety first and peace. Now, here's what's not being trumpeted on the mainstream media regarding both Donald Trump and Kamala Harris, followed by what Pope Francis said about both of them. With regards to Trump, that sweetheart deal of the 2008 Florida case against Jeffrey Epstein was also a sweetheart deal for Donald Trump. The case files were buried until just recently when, if they had not been kept from the public, Donald Trump would never have been elected president for a first time. And then later, when Trump runs for president in 2016 and Joe Biden becomes his #1 contender, Trump, an infamous name-caller, including calling Senator Elizabeth Warren Pocahontas, Trump, a man whose involvement in the 2008 Epstein case was kept from the public, doesn't take advantage of calling Joe Biden the already established Creepy Joe moniker and explaining why Biden has earned this slur, but instead calls him Sleepy Joe. Why does he completely avoid the Creepy Joe moniker? Is he going to throw stones at a presidential candidate accused of creepy, touchy, inappropriate behavior upon little girls and women that is recorded on film, while Trump himself knows there are recorded case files that have been kept from the public about his involvement with Jeffrey Epstein? Is it possible there is a power structure above American politics that wants the Epstein files and players' names to go away, to put the brakes on all talk of sexual abuse associated with political leaders, royalty, movie stars, and other famous people? The first time I heard Trump calling Biden Sleepy Joe, I knew he was playing a game, that he was not a Republican or Democrat, but of the elite protecting the elite, as has been going on for millennia after millennia in these governments built upon and run by people claiming to love the God of Abraham and or Jesus. I recommend folks consider watching these 3 videos from the YouTube channel Eric777 that has 7.8 thousand subscribers. All 3 videos are played under the Fair Use Act. A 6-minute 37-second video called Papal Night of St. Gregory, Epstein pal, Conrad Black, on his pardon from Jesuit-trained Trump, posted 4 years ago with 400 views. He has a 5-minute 44-second video from 4 years ago with 1,000 views called Kamala Harris was a gatekeeper for pedophile Catholic priests while DA, The Intercept, end quote. And folks, I realize that I sometimes say Kamala or Kamala, so please forgive me. I'll try to remember it's Kamala. Lastly, an 11-minute 14-second video from 3 years ago that has 4.4 thousand views called Kamala Harris speech at Jesuit St. Ignatius Church, admits she's Jesuit trained, in parentheses, May 23, 2009. I also suggest folks read the free PDF books by Avro, or I believe it's Avro, Manhattan, who used to be a judge in the Knights of Malta, who reveals the papacy ordered the German Catholic priests to tell the German Catholic laity to vote the Nazis into power, and that it was Jesuit Father Stampfle, Stampfle, that wrote Mein Kampf. The authorship of Mein Kampf is also confirmed in videos featuring ex-Jesuit Alberto Rivera, who also adds that Hitler was never excommunicated and is considered to the papacy, quote-unquote, a good Catholic. Alberto Rivera also explains how the papacy created Islam. If you search, you will find other videos on this subject. I also recommend the Lauren Murray channel on YouTube. That's Lauren, Leuren, Moret, Moret. Particularly the playlist of 35 videos titled Lauren Murray with Alfred Lambermont Weber. Most of the videos are 9 to 13 years old. Lauren Murray is an international expert on radiation, government cover-ups, drug trafficking, military and civilian experimentation, and historical bloodlines. She claims Hitler's ancestry can be traced to the Rothschild family. The Rothschilds are the Vatican bankers. Her video titled Lauren Murray, Global Chaos Agenda, Jesuits, Trump, Pope, Mexico Wall, Nuking USA, DHS Urban Warfare, speaks of Jesuitism and the involvement of leaders, including Barack Obama, Bill and Hillary Clinton, Donald Trump. Quote, all these people have gone through Jesuit training at some point in their careers or during their education, end quote. Later, Lauren Murray states that Bill Clinton is ancestrally part of the extended Rockefeller family, making Hillary also part of the extended Rockefeller family by marriage. Every nation in recorded history has demanded that its citizens do no harm, otherwise they may be prosecuted under that nation's laws. They can even be put into cruel prison systems for doing something even slight. But look at what is going on with the governance over these people. The governance is demanding that we live to do no harm, and yet they don't have to? We need to hold them accountable to the circumcision of the heart. It's there in Scripture. One covenant with God that substantively means the same thing as the one law. The greatest commandment, the all of the law. We live to make this unseen all good mind and spirit seen, which means that especially when troubles or problems or issues arise, we use our minds to find the solution that does no harm. Little children should be taught that we are here to problem solve without hurting others, that there is no anti-women, there is no anti-blacks, anti-any other races, anti-gays. People are just anti this first law of God. They're against the circumcision of the heart. They refuse to reconcile issues without hurting others. Is that you? Is that how you're living? Is this the governance you want upon your life? We must demand for all of our leaders to explain to the world what the all of the law of God means, to explain what the one circumcision is, to bring that reconciliation between Jew and Gentile and initiate world peace. Folks, with regards to immigration, it used to be, at least in my lifetime, that the responsibility was on the immigrant. That person, whatever country they're in, they need to prepare, they need to study, they will need to take tests, they will be vetted, and we invite you into the United States. We want you here. That's the way it has always been during my life as I understood it. So why not just return to those rules, that people from other countries shall have to prepare, study, take their tests, get vetted, and we welcome you in. What was so difficult about that? With regards to the abortion issue, there is just one abortion in that scripture that remains untaught, and though the Bible does not use the term abortion, it is the circumcision of the heart. That when we humans have rising desires to do harm, to get our way or for whatever gain, we are to circumcise or cut away or abort that rising desire that is within the unseen womb of our desires, that we are not going to give it life and make it seen. We abort that rising desire and instead use our brilliant minds to determine the problem source and find the solution that does no harm, keeping the safety and peace for all. Most of us are doing it every day. Now, here is the forgotten, historically silenced requirement from the Roman Catholic papacy, the requirimiento, read by Vincent de Valverde, Dominican monk to Incan leader Atahualpa and the indigenous peoples of the New World. I request and require you to recognize the Church as your mistress and as a governess of the world and universe, and if you do not do this, with the help of God we shall come mightily against you, and we shall make war on you everywhere and in every way that we can, and we shall subject you to the yoke and obedience of the Church and His Majesty, and we shall seize your women and children, and we shall make them slaves to sell and dispose of as His Majesty commands, and we shall do all the evil and damage to you that we are able, and I must insist that the deaths and destruction that result from this will be all your fault. Is that the way of Christ? This requirement, requirimiento, was read aloud to the native peoples of the New World, informing them of the divine rights of Spain to conquer in the name of God. So, how much more do we humans need to understand that Scripture is giving us a law that is called the greatest commandment, and a circumcision covenant that, if correctly defined, also correctly defines Jews and Gentiles, and brings forth the reconciliation between Jew and Gentile that initiates the promised restoration of peace on earth. And here is what First Catholic President John F. Kennedy said on April 27, 1961. The very word secrecy is repugnant in a free and open society, and we are as a people inherently and historically opposed to secret societies, to secret oaths, and to secret proceedings. Our way of life is under attack. Those who make themselves our enemy are advancing around the globe. No war ever posed a greater threat to our security. If you are awaiting a finding of clear and present danger, then I can only say that the danger has never been more clear and its presence has never been more imminent. For we are opposed around the world by a monolithic and ruthless conspiracy that relies primarily on covert means for expanding its sphere of influence, on infiltration instead of invasion, on subversion instead of elections, on intimidation instead of free choice, on guerrillas by night instead of armies by day. It is a system which has conscripted vast human and material resources into the building of a tightly knit, highly efficient machine that combines military, diplomatic, intelligence, economic, scientific, and political operations. Its preparations are concealed, not published. Its mistakes are buried, not headlined. Its dissenters are silenced, not praised. No expenditure is questioned, no rumor is printed, no secret is revealed. Folks, those behind the crimes against humanity, as well as the powerful voices of opposition, fall into one of two categories per Scripture: those that know not what they do, and those that do know. There is a dividing line that separates the two, and that dividing line is this one solution that has two parts: the restoration of the stone, or law, the builders rejected, called the all of the law, and the reconciliation between Jew and Gentile that happens when mankind finally learns what the terms Jew and Gentile actually mean. Were you ever taught as a child or any time in your life that there is just one law called the all of the law, the greatest commandment, the law of Moses, that substantively means the same thing as the one circumcision covenant? A covenant that is not a literal ritual cutting of a male's foreskin, or any literal ritual for that matter, but a way of life. Were you ever taught that we humans are here to problem solve without hurting others? We are here to make this unseen, all good mind and spirit seen, that when we have rising desires to do harm, to get our way, or for whatever gain, we are to circumcise or cut away or abort that desire and not give it life, and instead find the solution that does no harm. Were you ever taught any of this? Does it matter to you that this is in Scripture that has been kept untaught this whole time? Does it matter to you that Scripture warns us of wolves in sheep's clothing, people posing as God lovers or lovers of the good, or wanting the oppressions and wars to stop, but they keep their mouths shut? Thank you for watching.